William Lyon Mackenzie King was a defining factor in the 1920s because he was the longest reigning leader of Canada. He improved French and English Canadians, and because of the King being a fair. So he was the longest reigning prime minister, and he reigned for 3 times in a span of 27 years. So what caused the King being a fair was that it was a minority government, and the Liberals were being backed in power because of the progressive parties and the others supporting them, but then he started to lose this power and support from them, so he asked the Governor General, Lord Julian Byng, to dissolve Parliament for re-elections, but Lord Julian Byng did refuse this request. And so King resigned, and Arthur Meehan was named Prime Minister, but he broke some rules, which King pointed out, so then Arthur asked for re-elections, which Byng granted, and so in the end, actually, the Liberal Party and the leader, William Lyon Mackenzie King, actually won the re-election. So the consequences of the King being a fair was that after that incident occurred, there was the Westminster Statute was passed, and it further clarified, especially to dominions such as Canada, that Governor Generals had to follow the advice of Prime Ministers. So William Lyon Mackenzie King impacted Canadian identity positively because he further made us equal to British power and led us to making us separate from the British Dominion by creating this act, the Westminster Act, which further clarified that the Governor Generals had to follow the advice of the Prime Minister and not the Queen, and he further strengthened French and English Canadian relations by listening to the voices of French Canadians, building a relationship with them, which is found today with Justin Trudeau.
Arthur Meehan was significant to Canada in the 1920s because of his policies and laws enforced, his involvement in the King being a fair, and his influence on the Canadian economy. This is a picture of Arthur Meehan. Who was involved in the King being a fair? Mackenzie King, Lord Byng, and Arthur Meehan were all involved in the King being a fair because Mackenzie was resigning and Arthur was involved because it led to him becoming the Prime Minister for a second time. What caused Arthur Meehan to become Prime Minister? The first election, he became Prime Minister because he won most seats by minority government, and the second election was because King resigned and led to Meehan becoming the Prime Minister because there was no one else ready. What were the consequences of King resigning? It led to most Liberal supporters becoming angry because their Prime Minister retired, and Meehan was not fully prepared. How is Arthur Meehan significant to Canadian identity? Because of his economic changes and his policies made, for example, protective tariffing, and his involvement in the King being a fair. Why do not many people support King resigning? Most Canadian voters were Liberals, and majority of the voters were Liberal supporters, so they would not want their Prime Minister, a Liberal, to resign. And also people saw Arthur Meehan as unready.
The National Progressive Party was a political party that formed in 1920. Its platform was based on social democracy and agrarianism. The party later on split up in 1930. The National Progressive Party was significant in shaping Canada as it led to a reduction in tariffs and freight rates. The split of the party led to other political parties being created, and it contributed to the agrarian and progressive movement in Canada. The National Progressive Party was led by Tom Carrar. The party was involved with the Federal Liberals, the Canadian Council of Agriculture, and the Conservatives. The catalyst for the creation of the National Progressive Party was because of the opposition by Tom Carrar towards the Liberals uniting with Ontario and farmers from the Canadian Council of Agriculture. The party was also created due to Carrar's opposition to the Conservatives' national policy. The national policy was a plan to protect the manufacturing industry of Canada by increasing tariffs and freight rates. The Progressive Party refused to this plan by campaigning on a reduction for tariffs and freight rates. The party's efforts was the key factor to the reason why tariffs on farming machinery and freight rates were reduced in 1922. The formation and dismantle of the National Progressives Party was a crucial part in shaping Canada, as it led to a reduction in tariffs on farming machinery and freight rates. The split of the party led to other political parties and organizations being created, and it had a tremendous place in the agrarian and progressive movement of the post-War I struggles.
How has the women's suffrage movement impacted Canada? It made the women independent. It proved to the men that women are strong. Men are no longer in charge, as women are now treated equally to men. Men, many different opinions were expressed due to women now being treated the same as men. Women are now able to vote and work.
So what caused women's suffrage movement? Women wanted to be equal to the men. Women wanted the ability to vote in future federal elections. Women didn't get the ability, so they protested on the streets to express their opinions. Finally, women's suffrage movement was finally fully recognized in 1917 in Ontario. The Wartime Elections Act gave the vote to British women who were widows or had husbands, sons, fathers, or brothers serving overseas.
The political involvement of the Famous Five during the Persons case has been a defining factor of the 1920s, as it gave women the right to become members of the Senate, recognized that women are persons, and allowed them to achieve different political positions of employment. The Famous Five, Robert Borden, Supreme Court, and Privy Council were the main people and groups involved in the Persons case. In 1917, a group of women put Emily Murphy's name forward as candidate for Senate, although Robert Borden refused, saying that she was not a qualified person. This had set the Persons case in motion. Emily band together a group of women, later known as the Famous Five. The Famous Five took their case to the Supreme Court, but it was denied. The court argued that only men could be appointed as senators because they are persons. The women then took their case to the Privy Council, which overturned the Supreme Court's decision. They ruled that Canadian women are persons. This decision established that women were eligible to be members of the Senate. This movement had provided women similar rights as men and demonstrated that women were eligible for positions of political power. It gave them the right to have other high standard jobs as well. The actions of the Famous Five have significantly shown fundamental importance in the changes of political involvement for women. As they had gained equality under political appointment laws, it allowed women to achieve different political positions of employment. The Privy Council's decision had established that women were eligible to be members of the Senate. It became a huge movement in providing women the same rights as men, and of course, it recognized that women are persons.